Ahead of the 2020 general election, the Electoral Commission said that there were almost 10,000 hotspots across the country. In this year's election, the EC says that those numbers have been reduced from that almost 10,000 to now a little over 7,000. Sure, you remember that in 2020, 8 people died. But also, it goes beyond the deaths and the injuries. Sometimes it's just associated, the feelings are associated with the tensions that generally come with elections. And tonight, that's what we want to talk about. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Agenda. My name is Beatrice Edu, and tonight we want to go into those hotspots and how stakeholders in this general election can handle them in order not to foment trouble. We don't want to see another Ayawaso war gun at Tiwa in 2010. In 2000, when 30 people died. In 2016, 8 people died. 2012, 7 people died. This year, people are hoping that the elections that come off in 6 days will be incident-free and no blood will be shed. To help us have this discussion, I have on my right side Francis Poku. Mr. Francis Poku is the former National Security Minister. Good evening to you, sir. Thank you once again for joining us on Agenda.
Good evening. Thank you.
I have on my left side Mr. Kwesi Sapon. Kwesi Sapon is a security analyst. He is a former boss of the Narcotics Control Commission. When he was there, he used to be NACOP, Narcotics Control Board. He's also a lawyer as well, worked with the African and ECOWAS missions on elections. Good evening to you, sir. Thank you as well for joining us on Agenda.
Thank you very much, and good evening to your viewers.
And of course, we'll touch base or bring you an update of what has transpired throughout the 14 regions of the country with a special voting going on. I do have on the line via video call with us George Amo. He's the Executive Secretary of the Peace Council. Good evening to you, sir. If you can hear us, thank you for joining us on Agenda as well.
Good evening, and thanks for having me.
We'll be glad to see you. If you could kindly turn on your video. We also do have with us Fred Tete. He's Deputy Director of Research with the Electoral Commission that has been very busy throughout, even up until today. Good evening to you, sir. Thank you also for joining us on Agenda. Hello, Mr. Tete. I can see that you're muted. We can see you on. If you can kindly unmute yourself and also turn your video on so we can see you, if you can hear us. Thank you for joining us as well. Okay, so we'll try and hear Mr. Tete, but obviously we'll connect to him ahead of and get a general view, really, as regards the special voting today. But I want to start with you, Mr. Kwesi Sapon. Many have said that we cannot leave anything to chance. And I was just giving some statistics, and I just mentioned a few of them, really. 2020, 8 people dying. 2016, we had the same 8 people dying. 2012, 7. 2000, we had the highest. I mean, in the Fourth Republic. 30 people, and that happened in Boko, a conflict-raged area. Are you satisfied, really, with what has transpired so far, bearing in mind the meetings with the police service as well?
Well, first of all, I would like to stress that this whole thing about elections, it is the mandate of Electoral Commission. I mean, the Election Security Task Force at the district, regional and national levels, and all law enforcement agencies are supposed to be helping the Electoral Commission. And I think that in the run-up to these elections, I see a big improvement.
From 2020? In
the narrative. The Electoral Commission is asserting itself a little more. Because it is not the job of the IGP and the Election Security Committee.
But why did you draw the line here? Because I've seen
I'm coming. So, the electoral, look, if you go to the polling station, who calls the shots at the polling station?
The officers. The
polling officer. It's not the police officer. It is the polling, it is the, what's it called? The polling, how do you call it in
the polling officers, you mean?
Yes, the polling officers of the Electoral Commission, who is in charge of the police station. He calls the shots. So if he determines that this person should be taken away by the police from the where we are voting, the police will come in. Let's take it back. Let's trickle it up. When we trickle it up, it means that on election day, it is the chairman of the Electoral Commission and her or his commissioners who are in charge. That is why when you go to IPAC meetings and all this, the police doesn't come in there. It's a discussion between political parties and the Electoral Commission.
So these are your preliminary thoughts.
These are my preliminary thoughts, yeah.
I'll come back to you, but I just want to get clarity on what you said earlier. You said that there's an improvement. How did you mean by there's an improvement? And just asking you two questions in one, does it also mean that the previous ones, the EC failed woefully because it didn't assert itself?
It is not that it failed woefully, but it was a learning process. You know, don't forget that we came from a military rule, you know, from military rulings to, if you like, democratic rulings. And so there was a certain sense in which there was an over-secretization of issues. So the Electoral Commission was always depending on the state. You know, so you wanted to see more. For example, you could see in the last election that police officers and military guys holding guns around polling stations. You didn't see that in what's it called, Ascent Central. There isn't tasers. And I do know that instructions have gone out that at each polling station, there should be no police officer with a gun or soldiers with a gun. That is a big improvement in the narrative.
I'll come back to you, Mr. Poku. You just heard him, Mr. Kwesi Sapon, saying that there is an improvement and also insisting on the fact that it is not the IGP's job to be ensuring that everybody is safe, if I got you correctly. It's the Electoral Commission that caused the shot over there. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are. And I'll come to you, Mr. George Amon, as well as the Electoral Commission.
Well, I think here we're looking at the various stakeholders. The Electoral Commission is an institution responsible for the conduct of elections. But we are interested in the tensions and unrest that could be created as a result of the various decisions that might be taken, as to the various lapses that could occur. And this is where we come in, to ensure that the process is fair, because if the process is not fair, we're going to have tensions in the country. Now, in discussions like this, we have to look at the whole environment. What are the tensions? And who are the stakeholders? Now, currently, we're looking at the situation in terms of the attitude of the various political parties. And why is there so much interest abroad about the elections? The perception abroad is that we are in a state of tension. So yes, the Electoral Commission is there. If all goes well, there shouldn't be any problem. But there are genuine fears that if we are not careful, we could have tensions and unrest.
Even as we speak?
Well, at least that is what the communication has been. And that is why there have been various processes. Started with the IPAC, the engagement with the Electoral Commission, which had to go well. Because without the cooperation of the various political parties, the situation could have been more tense. But happily, the engagement proceeded. And then we came to the other agencies. So it's a whole process. And if it's not well managed, we could have the challenges that obviously has to be managed. And that is why the police and the military, they've come in very nicely.
Well, at this time, we know that the IGP said that the police, the military was not going to be coming in until very necessary. And we heard him during a number of press conferences saying that because a lot of people have expressed misgivings about military on our polling grounds. We don't need them there. And I think perhaps you've got more to say on that. But I want to go to Mr. Francis Tete, who is Deputy Director of Research at the Electoral Commission, just to get an understanding of what transpired today. And we'll go, okay, so I'll go to Mr. Tete, but I know Mr. George Amo, Executive Secretary of the Peace Council, is on standby for us. Mr. Amo, if you can hear us, just really want to find out, I mean, ahead of this election, the Peace Council had been accused, as it were, of not being proactive. A number of things had gone on, and there was no response, as it were, active response from the Peace Council towards dealing with it. And I'll just give you a few examples. We heard the NDC repeatedly saying that, well, fortunately, we had John Mahama, the flag bearer of the NDC, signing the Peace Pact just last week. But ahead of that, we had concerns that they were not going to sign because Peace Council had failed at ensuring that there was peace and the people who were culprits in the violence we saw in 2020, they were dealt with. And now we're going into this year's general election. We've heard that Professor Nana Jenopukwajiman, her convoy was already attacked around Akuse. Joanna Kujo, Amenfi Central MP representative or parliamentary candidate, was also attacked. I wonder whether really you wouldn't accept the fact that perhaps the Peace Council, you know, hasn't been up to the task as expected of it ahead of the elections.
Beatrice, thank you, and greetings to senior colleagues at the studio, my uncles, Chris Sapon, and General. Greetings to you and my friend Fred. I think let me start by thanking the flag bearers, the presidential candidates who willingly committed to the peace of this country last Thursday. I think we are very grateful to them. They've shown once again that we are able to pull together when we decide so to do. And also to thank the Inspector General of Police, IGP, my senior brother, Dampare, and the Chief Justice, and the Electoral Commissioner. I think we are grateful to all of you for supporting the cause of peace ahead of the December election, the 7th December elections. But Beatrice, I think that the NDC, and as far as I can recall, never accused the Peace Council of failing, you know, to act on the issues that came up after the last elections.
I'm not sure you heard Johnson Asiedun Ketia and other executives of the party.
Yeah, they didn't accuse the Peace Council. What they raised issues regarding security, you know, and how we were able to go about, you know, dealing with infractions after elections. I think these were the concerns, but I never recall they ever accused the Peace Council, you know. So that is one. Let me put on record that after the 2020 elections, the Peace Council went to all the 5 constituencies where fatalities unfortunately happened. Odududu, Kaswa, Techiman, Savlugu. The Peace Council in March 2021 had to do our first intervention. And you know, the Peace Council must be understood. We do not use the kinetic methods in addressing conflictual issues. I think General will tell you, we use the soft approaches. And if you are talking about a soft approach, you are talking about mending broken relationships. And what are the methods that we use? Negotiation, dialogues, you know, preventive diplomacy. So it is about talking people into peace and not using the machete or the gun or the fear, you know, method to put people together again. No. So the Peace Council has a mandate to prevent, manage, and resolve conflicts through facilitation and development of mechanisms.
So let me bring you one of the concerns. Well, let me bring you one of the concerns of the critics. Their concern was that the Peace Council had been silent in all of this. They expected that at least there would be some proactiveness on your part.
Good. So they didn't say we failed. So people have expressed that. But we should also understand the mandate. What is it that Peace Council have been set up to do? If you are a mediator, indeed, if you read the Act 818, the Peace Council is expected to be a mediating institution. And if you're a mediator, ADR practitioners will tell you, peace building, practitioners will tell you, you do not make comments that can affect the outcome of a possible complaint before you. So if, for example, Beatrice, at Media General, there is a complaint, and there is somebody who has been assigned a duty to offer mediation in times of conflict between staff, and this person goes ahead to condemn or to do something, you are not likely to submit yourself, when the person invites you. So that is the difficult work we do. And I will not, yes.
I will give you the opportunity to conclude on your thoughts, and I'm sure there's more you want to say when we come back from this break. You're still here on Agenda on TV3. We're just looking at the hotspots that have been identified with just 5 days to the country's general election. I have on the panel with me Mr. Akresi Sapon. He's former NACOC boss. He's a lawyer, security chief. I also do have as well Mr. Francis Poku, who is a former national security minister under the Kufuor administration. You just watched the George Amu, executive secretary of the National Peace Council. When we come back, we'll still try and connect to the Electoral Commission Deputy Director of Research, who will give us an understanding and assessment of what has transpired today at the special voting and going into this year's general election, how they are going to manage the hotspots. Just stay with us.
We have all heard the cry of a nation in turmoil. And we need a leader who is capable, a leader who is caring, a leader who will not just engage in sloganeering, but a leader who has depth and makes decisions that will endure to the long-term benefit of the country. I think that in the last few years, this country has experienced what I call an imperial presidency. And as this current government exits the stage, we will need a leader who can restore the country to the sovereign people of Ghana. That for me is very, very important. I believe that JM is that person at this point in time. Let us go and vote for change.
Vote for change. Vote for John Mahama and the NDC.
Papa Sammy, I beg if you find something small, give us.
Bro Sammy, you see, no be say boys no want do nothing and just they rely on handouts. Jobs to no deal.
I understand your hassle. Hope they come. John Mahama they come do the national apprenticeship program where he go sort you guys.
Brother Sammy, wait till be that.
John Mahama knows say no be everybody way won't work for office.
Like me.
That one day is true.
Under the national apprenticeship program, young men and women where they won't learn craft will be enrolled under the program and attached to a senior craftsman who will train them for free.
I beg you, mechanic day inside. Me like this, I don't want to learn mechanical, but the course no.
Mechanics day inside. Organizing, dressmaking, fabric making, catering, hairdressing, tiling, painting. What they even sweet about this whole thing, they say, when you plead, the NDC government go make sure say they go give you certificate where you go fit take go look for job anywhere.
Oh, that's be wonderful.
Another wonderful thing be say, when you plead, the NDC government go set you up with startup capital and equipment to make sure you can start your own business.
Wow! I dey go shopping my town wait 7th December.
Vote for change. Vote for John Mahama and the NDC.
Afraid omu disika ebe tomadwene. Ama wahu se o de ye chino koma amfie nso a last minute ye disika kakra bi ba ye beto wadwene. This time muma ye nchire omadwene se ye nchire omu se sensuo to ye ne yantia ade achi ye forma fonso ye huni enti ubesi ye so anka ahye ye ma mfie nso ye ma padwuma ye nya bi police ye nya bi migration ye nya bi fire service ye nya bi prisons ye nya bi teaching ye nya bi nursing ye nya bi local government ye nya bi ena ebinim ton wo delegate wo ko padwuma ma abakora ye situ ya 10,000 me call Bolga Upper East. One of the regional executives catch them say ne bagel or pay police a man okura omo gene 10,000 Ghana cedi enso wo enya adwuma na amane bas ke momma obi obetimi ama adwuma ba adwuma wo a ehia so bokoko sika.
Vote John Dramani Mahama for president. Trustworthy, honest, and reliable. Vote for change. Choose the umbrella. Vote John Dramani Mahama and the NDC.
Ninfonina Muntu Aba Emma Obia Usunyame Obevin dancing. Muntu Aba Emma John Dramani Mahama any NDC na aksitremu enyenre emayinina.
Vote for change. Vote for John Mahama and the NDC.
Over the last 8 years, we've seen an insensitive government, a government that has made corruption the order of the day, and a government that has put most Ghanaians into poverty. In 2022 alone, 825,000 Ghanaians fell into poverty. As I speak to you now, 41% of Ghanaians are described as multidimensionally poor. Our unemployment rate is 14.7%, double what the current administration MPP came to meet. 2.1 million people unemployed, most of them women, most of them young people at the prime of life who should be earning and taking care of themselves and basically building families. They are at home, stuck with nothing to do, waiting for a change. John Mahama represents that change. He represents empathy, sensitivity, in contrast to the arrogance that we have seen over the last 8 years, in contrast with the selfishness that we have seen over the last 8 years. John is determined, as he has pronounced in the 24-hour economy, to rebuild this country with your help, with your support, with your energy, so that we can reconstruct our country and make it what it should be, able to feed all its people, able to house all its people, able to school all its people, and able to ensure that all its people are healthy.
Vote for change. Vote for John Mahama and the NDC.
And you're still here on Agenda on TV3. My name is Beatrice Edu. We are looking at hotspots across the country and how to manage them in order not to see what we witnessed in 2020, as well as some other major elections where we saw people lose their lives. I was telling you that we'll be touching base with the Electoral Commission representative just to get an understanding of what has transpired through this special voting. And we do have with us Francis Tete. He's Deputy Director of Research with the Electoral Commission. He joins us via video call. Mr. Tete, hopefully this time around you can hear us and we can see you clearly. First of all, can you give us an assessment of this special voting today before we go into other details?
Thank you very much. And my greetings to you, Beatrice, and Mr. Oku, as well as Mr. Sapon, and my friend George Amu. Well, the Commission will say that as to the special voting that went on today in the 276 constituencies or polling stations, it went very well. It was smooth and seamless, very peaceful, and that's what we are expecting. So far, so good.
So far, so good, you say. But Eastern and Western regions, they couldn't have their votes today. I mean, it was postponed. How does the Electoral Commission take responsibility for what transpired? Yes, the seal broke, there was a leak. But do you take any responsibility at all as regards why this thing happened, and as a result, people who might have traveled from across the country just to be in their constituencies couldn't vote, and theirs will take place on the 5th?
Yeah, what we can say is that it's just unfortunate that we experienced something like this, and the Commission have no choice than to suspend the elections in those places to Thursday, 5th December. But I must say that this is not the first time things like this has happened in special voting in Ghana. If people could recall, in 2016, similar thing happened where voters on special voters list went to the poll on the 1st of December, and many of them could not find their names. Therefore, the elections in some places have to be scheduled to 4th December. So, yes, it's a human endeavor, and when things like this happens, we all look forward and move forward, John.
A human endeavor, you say, but in that recent press conference, which was addressed by your boss and the chair of the Electoral Commission, and I'm quoting or paraphrasing what she said that the Electoral Commission had put in place robust systems and even described the breaking of the seal, for which reason Eastern region and Western region couldn't vote today. She described them as minor. Can you explain to us really how minor they were when eventually Eastern and Western regions could not partake in this year's, today's special voting?
Yeah, if I could say and understand what my boss said, minor in that critically it was not about the issue of this broken seal. It was about the sneaking of, or the sneak out of one ballot paper from the printing house where the ballot papers were printed. That's the crucial thing that the Commission was talking about. But I think it's just unfortunate that things like this happens, because if you want to protect the integrity of the ballot, you make sure all kind of nitty points and everything that goes with it comes clean. And therefore, the Commission, in its wisdom, thinking that, look, this one ballot paper that has sneaked out, though defaced, could be used. You don't know the hands where this thing will fall into and how it could be used. And therefore, the Commission felt it's appropriate to reprint the ballot in order to protect the integrity of the ballot papers. And
so from where you sit, today's exercise overall was a success?
Yes, I must say that it's a success, though we are still compiling the returns in terms of the turnout. From places that I was able to monitor, especially through Teshinungwa, which is the Nungwa police station, and I went to Tema Community 1 police station, which happens to be the center for Tema West, and then Tema East Community 1 police stations. I think all those places that I was able to monitor today, the turnout was quite encouraging.
Let's go into
everything was quite beautiful.
Let's go into the issues a number of people are equally concerned about: security. We have seen the IGP interact with different stakeholders, the media, political parties, and other stakeholders. And in all of that, he kept saying that the military was not going to be part of this year's general election. A lot of people have actually been against that. Beyond that statement from the IGP, what sort of further assurances have you had from the police service so that we do not see what we saw again in Techiman South, Hablekuma Central, and the others in the last 4 years general election?
Well, if you could recall, apart from the engagement that the Electoral Commission has been having with the National Election Security Task Force, when it comes to the issue of election security, though it falls squarely in the ambit of the police service and therefore the National Election Security Task Force. But election security on the day of elections, apart from the security, it's a collective responsibility of all stakeholders. When you talk of the role of political parties, you talk of the role of the presiding officers or officials at the polling stations, the voters, the candidate themselves and the agents, as well as the voters. So it is a collective responsibility that we must all make sure that whatever we are doing on election day ensures the peace of the nation.
I want you to hold on because I want to come to Mr. Kwesi Sarpong. Mr. Kwesi Sarpong, earlier I was saying that the Electoral Commission had reduced the hotspot, and I'll get details of that from Mr. Tete very shortly. But the hotspots have been reduced from almost 10,000 to now over 7,000. But we still saw what happened in the last general election. How do we ensure that we are able to manage even the identified hotspots so history doesn't repeat itself?
In identifying hotspots are locations of risk assessment. And generally, when you do the risk assessment, you come to the conclusion. You make a comparison between the protective capability of the state and the propensity for violence. Where the propensity for violence outweighs the protective capability of the state, that place becomes a hotspot. And who grants the protective capability of the state? That is where the police is involved. So the NIB and police intelligence need to work closely together to identify those hotspots. Now, I hope that the Electoral Commission came up with the numbers whilst seeking professional advice and not just mere propaganda,
But to make the government look good, that's...
No, it has to make itself look good. I mean, not about government. It has to make itself look good. Because for me, Electoral Commission, in making that announcement, ought to have been doing it with NIB and the police service together. See, because when it comes to security, people want to see a collective... Mr. Tete is talking about all stakeholders. It's too theoretical. When you come to, yes, it's true, everybody is involved. But when somebody comes from he's in a village, or he goes to vote. You tell him that within 100 meters, he's not supposed to be there. So he goes to sleep. Are you saying that he's a stakeholder for peace? So, critically, it is, I've said that, Electoral Commission. But they are assisted by the police because the police is in charge of state security for public safety. So it is important that, I don't know where they got the 7,000 from. I have not made, maybe my senior brother, uncle, who has been working in the BNI for many years before he became National Security Coordinator, and then later, he'll be able to let us know. But reducing the hotspots from 20,000 to 7,000 in 4 years is a magical way. I mean, it is not possible.
You don't think it's realistic? You think it's not realistic? It's just massaging the figures?
It is not.
He's massaging the figures?
Well, they may not be massaging the figures, but either they got the 20,000 wrong the first time, or they've got a 7,000.
It was almost 10,000.
Oh, either they got the 10,000 wrong the first time, or they got the 7,000 wrong.
I want you to hold on because I want to get that answer briefly from Mr. Tete. Mr. Tete, if you're still on the line with us, I think the understanding I'm getting is that Mr. Kwesi Sarpong wants to understand on what basis you reduce the numbers or the hotspots, as it were, from over 9,000 to 7,200. Are you able to just really give us an understanding of how you arrived at that?
Or who gave them
or who gave you the figures?
Well, thank you. Well, thank you very much. These are not figures that we just churn them out of the blue. What we do is that when you look at 2020, the 9,644 hotspots that we're talking about, I must point out that the fact that you identify a place in an election year as a hotspot doesn't mean that in the following year election period it will be a hotspot. Okay, so the 9,644 that we're talking about in 2020, these are locations identified by our district officers, our returning officers, and the operatives on the ground.
On what basis?
We give them a criteria, a template, so that they identify those places, go around. So we start picking this kind of hotspots from the period of registration. Okay, and I must say that for some time now, we have about, if I could recall, from 1996, 2000 down there, we're having about 30 constituencies that has been recording hotspots. And for that period, we've never had Ayawasu West Rogon as a hotspot in terms of constituency until the by-elections. So we have a criteria, we have certain kind of indicators.
Are you able to give us an understanding, just so I can move to Mr. Poku, just a brief understanding, if you've got about 7, if you can name about 3 criteria, you used 3 objectives, as it were, in order to arrive at what you just did?
One of the key things that we look at rowdiness, we look at intimidation of voters, we look at ballot box snatching, we look at places where there are clashes between political activists, we look at there are so many indicators. We look at places where there are even intrusion by what you call non-citizens. So we look at all those things. We even identify polling stations located within areas with chieftaincy dispute.
I want you to hold.
We look at all.
I want you to hold on with that, Mr. Kwesi Sapon. Can you conclude on your thoughts, and I'll come to Mr. Francis Poku, and I'll come to you, Mr. Jojamo, after.
Well, all I would say is that, having listened to him, in identifying hotspots, it has to be over a period. For example, for us to identify the hotspots for 2028, the day after, or even on the D-Day, the incidents that occurred, we need to roll them out. Now, indeed, the socio-cultural issues surrounding hotspots are very critical. And I'm happy he spoke about chieftaincy disputes, snatching of ballot boxes. Those are some of the issues that we have to talk about in these elections. Will there be snatching of ballot boxes? How can the snatch of ballot boxes be stopped? Will there be intimidation of voters? How can the intimidation be stopped? Those are the questions we need to really address during this discussion, because for me, those are very critical.
Those are very critical. Mr. Poku.
Well, you refer to a national election task force. So the IGP is the front for the coordinator of the task force. And when it comes to implementation, the IGP is the one that will make an assessment as to the contribution by other members of the National Election Task Force. So the IGP here is more or less in a coordinating role, but he has done the right thing because he has put out, he's been engaging even with the Peace Pact, all stakeholders of peace. He engages with the media, And also, at the National Election Task Force, there will be briefing from the security agencies as to the decision on the task force, on the hotspots. Because the hotspots issue is an assessment as to what could happen, depending on certain criteria. One of it could be historical, what has happened in the past. It could be socio-economical situations, whether the areas are heterogeneous. When there is a mix with different political groups trying to entice membership, it creates tension. Could be areas of high unemployment. It could be intelligence-based, what information is available. It could be marginal seats where there is a tussle for supremacy. So the criteria is established, it's an assessment, it's not tangible, but it guides the security agencies as to the decision on deployment.
Because Odododio, for instance, has always been hotspots. And last year, how many people died? About 3 people died.
As I said,
2 children.
It's historical, it's an assessment.
In the last general election.
And also, there are areas that could develop to be hotspots without even having been targeted as a hotspot. So, as I said, it's an assessment. Now, the IGP is responsible for the elections, and he has said it, but he has said he could call in the military if necessary. And here, let's refer to the statement made on the 1st of December, last Sunday, statement issued by the military. And the military confirms that the police will be responsible for the elections, and the military will not interfere at polling stations, but they will be standing by to give support or assistance if requested by the Inspector General of Police.
If requested by the Inspector General of Police, we'll continue on that thought. But when we come back, we'll also look at, we heard Mr. Kwesi Sapon talking about questions that we need to ask, whether there will be snatching of ballot boxes and whether people who are going to vote will be intimidated. We'll look into how perhaps the lack of punishment for perpetrators of violence and such acts could embolden people and how we could deal with it. We're just 5 days to the country's general election. Stay with us.
Papa Sammy, I beg if you find something small, give us.
Bro Sammy, you see, no be say boys no one do nothing and just they rely on handouts. Jobs to no deal.
I understand the hassle. Hope they come. John Mahama, they come do the National Apprenticeship Program where he go sort you guys.
Brother Sammy, waiting with that.
John Mahama knows say no be everybody way won't work for office.
Like me.
That one day is true.
Under the National Apprenticeship Program, young men and women where they won't learn craft will be enrolled under the program and attached to a senior craftsman who will train them for free.
I beg you, mechanic day inside. Me like this. I don't want to learn mechanical, but the course no.
Mechanics day inside. Organizing, dressmaking, fabric making, catering, hairdressing, tiling, painting. What they even sweet about this whole thing, they say, when you plead, the NDC government go make sure say they go give you certificate where you go fit take go look for job anywhere.
That's sweet.
Oh, that's be wonderful.
Another wonderful thing they say, when you plead, the NDC government go set you up with startup capital and equipment to make sure you can start your own business.
Wow! I dey go shopping my town wait 7 December.
Vote for change. Vote for John Mahama and the NDC.
How can we solve the unemployment crisis in Ghana? Yes, Massa.
By using the formula 133.
Can you expatiate?
Say, this simply means 1 job, 3 shifts, 3 people. That is the Mahama 24-hour economy policy. Under this policy, businesses will be given tax incentives, cheaper electricity, financial support, and security support services to encourage them to work 24/7 by adopting 3 work shifts of 8 hours each. This will triple job opportunities in the country. This policy will boost production, increase productivity, and generate well-paying jobs in all participating businesses and public organizations.
Excellent. The 24-hour policy will be a game changer.
Vote for change. Vote for John Mahama and the NDC.
Over the last 8 years, we've seen an insensitive government, a government that has made corruption the order of the day, and a government that has put most Ghanaians into poverty. In 2022 alone, 825,000 Ghanaians fell into poverty. As I speak to you now, 41% of Ghanaians are described as multidimensionally poor. Our unemployment rate is 14.7%, double what the current administration MPP came to meet. 2.1 million people unemployed. Most of them women, most of them young people at the prime of life who should be earning and taking care of themselves and basically building families. They are at home stuck with nothing to do, waiting for a change. John Mahama represents that change. He represents empathy, sensitivity, in contrast to the arrogance that we have seen over the last 8 years, in contrast with the selfishness that we have seen over the last 8 years. John is determined, as he has pronounced in the 24-hour economy, to rebuild this country with your help, with your support, with your energy, so that we can reconstruct our country and make it what it should be, able to feed all its people, able to house all its people, able to school all its people, and able to ensure that all its people are healthy.
Vote for change. Vote for John Mahama and the NDC.
And you're still here on Agenda on TV3. My name is Beatrice Edu. We're just wrapping up our conversation here on managing hotspots. But before we went on break, the former National Security Minister, Mr. Francis Poku, had not concluded on his thought. And you were talking about the military confirming that indeed is not taking part in this year's general election until the police invites soldiers to come to help. I just wanted you to conclude on that thought, and I'll go to Mr. Kwesi Sapon, and I'll wrap up with you, Mr. Amo, and Mr. Tete of the Electoral Commission.
Okay, quickly, first of all, we have to acknowledge that there has been a progression. You can imagine the time when even the parties were not agreed on the relationship with IPAC. That has been done. We've had the peace pact that we never imagined. There was dispute as to whether all parties were going to subscribe. That has happened. So we can see progression. And regarding the military and the police, it's been well organized. The IGP has been acknowledged as being in charge of the election security-wise, but before then, he has engaged with the various national security stakeholders. So he is coming out, but the rest are participants. Some of the agencies are dispersed to various polling stations, but the military, the statement of last Sunday is quite clear.
It's quite clear.
And appealing to the public to report individuals who may be impersonating as military officers, and also the use of patterned military uniforms. So they are quite clear, and they are also stated that if the situation got out of hand, and the IGP so decides, they could come and support the police.
So I just want you, in like 30 seconds, if you could kindly help us, just your final thoughts, because earlier you mentioned that if we do not manage the situation well, it could get out of hand. But now I'm hearing you say that you think that going into this year's election, the role of the stakeholders or the roles are quite clear, and so we shouldn't expect any disturbance.
It has been clear, and you can see that all the tensions that were predicted all over is disappearing.
It's disappearing.
And there is more relaxation, And I believe that it's going to be very peaceful on the day because there has been progression, and I believe the security agencies are
So
working very
you
hard.
wouldn't even count the attack on Memphis Central MP, the running mate of John Mahama, Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, as being anything at all?
Well, these incidents have been investigated.
The candidates, I mean.
So the candidates, we're not sure whether these are political actions. But the point we are making is that the structures as laid out by both the IGP and the military make things very clear. So anyone outside the two institutions trying to undertake any forms of violence will be dealt with by the police. And if the police so decides, based on the assessment,
will be dealt with by the police. That's what you're saying. But it doesn't look like from 2020, we've seen people dealt with completely, because people are still complaining about Ayawaso, Techiman South, and all those people. And we don't have time to go into even reports that have been issued. Mr. Kwesi Sapon, you earlier talked about snatching of ballot boxes. I was just wondering, and I would want it to be your final word as well, your concluding statement, how you think the lack of punishment, as it were, for individuals who've been involved in such acts probably could bolden people to take another step going into this year's general election.
Yeah, but clearly, anybody who wants to do that is doing that because nobody has been punished yet. That is unfortunate. But we need to learn our own lessons as a nation. And I think that this is where I would urge the executive of the incoming government after the election to consider critically listening to the intelligence community, both in the opposition and their own intelligence community. Because that's the only, it is only anything your intelligence community tells you, you must listen to it. And if we do that, and I'm sure that the intelligence community has been telling executives,
they are probably not listening. That's what you're saying.
People must be punished. It's very, very important. The decision for punishment is not for the executive. The decision for punishment is for the police to go ahead.
They must be allowed to do that.
They must be allowed to do that. No interference. Because, I must commend the IGP because he has shown a lot of professionalism. And all indications are that these elections will be tightly contested. And it is the professionalism of the police, the transparency and fairness by the Electoral Commission that would do
that'll be it. Ms. Amo, I want to give you 30 seconds, really, from the point of the Peace Council, what do you expect, and really whether the attack on Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, Joanna Kujo, anything to go by, something that gets you worried as a Peace Council, in like 30 seconds?
No, I think that we have progressed quite well. I think my seniors have indicated that we have to use the methods available for addressing issues when they come to us. In times like this, I want to encourage everyone. We have given to ourselves as a people mechanisms for addressing issues at every step on our ways. If you look at election-related matters, indeed, anybody who has carefully followed our election system, there is inherent, inbuilt mechanism for addressing issues. So I want to appeal to everybody, do not take the law to yourself. You cannot use violence to address a violent issue. Let us use the laid down procedures, very important. And also to appeal to areas where there are difficulties, including Boko, that we should help and allow everyone to exercise his or her franchise, without hate or hindrance. I think that we have to do that so that every Ghanaian will express their views.
Indeed.
Regarding who is to be their next MP or the President of the Republic.
Indeed.
And finally, Beatrice.
Finally, if you can please land on your thoughts.
With tolerance. We cannot think the same way. So let us tolerate. And whoever is elected as the member of parliament for your constituency and the President of the Republic, Next week, by this time, we would know. Please let us rally behind.
Okay, the line just froze there, but we'll have to end it here with you. Thank you very much, George Amon, Executive Secretary of the National Peace Council. I've also had with me Mr. Francis Poku, he's former National Security Minister. Also, Mr. Kwesi Sapon, former NACOC boss. I'm sorry, Mr. Francis Tete of the Electoral Commission, we couldn't come back to you. But that's it for Agenda Tonight. My name is Beatrice Edu. Thank you so much for joining us today. Join us again next week. Coming up next is Ghana Tonight. Don't go away.
24-hour economy is a vision. A vision for you, a vision